Good morning. Today on Spotlight, we'll look at a new report about Michigan women leadership just released by Inform. How much progress have women made in the business world? Terry Barclay, President and CEO of Inform, and Rick DeVore, Regional President of PNC Bank, will tell us. And later on this program, a conversation with Mitsuhiro Wada, the Consul General of Japan, based in Detroit, and Takashi Omitsu, advisor to the Japan Business Society of Detroit. What impact is Japan having on our city and our nation? We'll talk about it. It's Sunday, November the 12th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Terry, I'm going to start with you. You were here a couple years ago. You had a report then, I guess since what, about 2003, Inform has periodically put out different reports. Now you've got one in 2017. Are women making progress?
Well, I think that one of the highlights is that there's been a rather slow pace of change because, as you pointed out, Chuck, we have been doing this for a while, so we're able to make those comparisons. But there's, as with all things, there's good news and there's bad news.
So when you saw the results of the report, what brought a smile to your face and what made you want to go slam that door?
Well, women are, to top line results, women are about 15% of the board seats for the 100 largest public companies in Michigan, 13% of the executive officer ranks, and about 9% of the top earner ranks. What brought a smile to my face is that the number of companies that are 000 companies, that is, no women in either one of those three categories, is down, and the triple check companies are up. So there are more women in those roles. The other thing that brought a smile to my face was just the companies that are doing an incredible job. And I'd like to just call out, give a shout out to a couple of those companies. They deserve it. They do deserve it. Some of the top scoring companies are General Motors, with 45% of their board are women.
They better with Mary Barra in charge.
That's right. That's right. Kellogg's another top one with 38%. Herman Miller. All of these are in the 30% range. Herman Miller, CMS Energy, Patty Poppe. People know that Mary Barra is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Patty Poppe at CMS Energy is our second woman CEO of a Fortune 500 in Michigan. And Steelcase, those are the top scoring companies in the state.
We're not headquartered in Michigan, but we have 8 board seats and 3 are women.
Tell me your connection to Inform and your interest in this report.
Well, I'm a member of Inform because somebody sitting next to me is pretty persuasive.
Twisted your arm.
Well, when I got back to Michigan about 7.5 years ago, I think I met Terry really early on, and you know, we've been members of Inform for some time. We have employee-based resource groups at our firm for a number of years. One of them is Detroit Women Connect, and so really, you know, to me, I need to do the same thing that our CEO, Bill Demchak, does, which is, you know, you have to lead by what you do, not just what you say. And, you know, for me, this is important.
Walk the talk.
Well, and it's really important for lots of reasons, not the least of which is it's the right thing to do. But from a business standpoint, you know, if you look at the city of Detroit or Southeast Michigan, most of the majority, more than 50% of the new businesses being formed are being formed by women.
Right.
It's also the
I think I saw a figure of something like 430,000 some odd is the growth rate in new businesses in the state. And I think Michigan is 9th among the U.S. states in terms of growth.
And the city of Detroit is
in the top 5.
And so I think a lot of that could be associated with, you know, technology and the ease to distribute your product and get the word out. But I think also it's a number of women, I think, are probably using it as a vehicle to say, you know what, I'm going to be my own boss here. And, you know, getting back to PNC, 61% of our employees are women. And which, by the way, matches about the freshman class at 4-year public universities right now.
We'll talk about that in 1 second when we come right back with Terry Barclay and Rick DeVore. women are 50% or more of the population. You would think that given those numbers, that they would be at those same levels in corporate America and across the board in business. Why not?
And you put your finger on the issue, Chuck, is just the slow pace of change. You know, at the rate that we're going, we now have data from the last decade. At the rate that we're going, it's going to take 34 years for gender parity to be achieved on boards and 150 years for it to be achieved in the executive suite. And as you pointed out, women are 60% of college graduates. I think that part of what's going on, and it was pointed out in the McKinsey Lean In research recently, is a little bit of complacency. That research found that men think that women are well represented. Up to half of men think women are well represented if they're only 1 out of 10 senior officers in a company. And actually a third of women agree with that. And so I think that one of the key things companies can do is focus on talent development throughout, over the course of women's careers.
Well, if I could just start, I would agree with Terry that the number one thing every prospect or client that we see, we do not have a meeting where talent does not come up. And it has to do with unemployment rate, it has to do not only with attraction of talent, but retention. So, I mean, I just wanted to level set from a banker's perspective. You're spot on that. It's not good enough, and the research shows this, just to say, well, here's my pool for the new hire. And, oh, I have a woman in the pool. You'll see the statistics in the report will show that if there's 1 woman and 3 men or 1 woman and 4 men, the odds of that woman getting that job are really slim. And so I think it goes beyond just having some people in the pool, but you need a bigger pool with more diversity. I would say there are some changes at the board level that are coming that I think can get at this 34 years that Terry mentioned earlier, and that is the following. One, the fact that maybe mandatory retirement might be something that some of the boards are starting to look at. And then the second thing is the no longer having staggered terms. Like if you look at PNC's board, the slate comes up every year. In other words, it's not a staggered board of 3, 2, and 1 years. That also gives some of the firms, like say a BlackRock, which we still own 21% of, but also people like Institutional Shareholder Services, they said, these are issues that we want you, board of directors, to pay attention to.
And Chuck, I just have to say that in the companies that we've seen have moved the needle the farthest, the fastest, it is entirely about the commitment of senior leadership at those companies to have sort of a relentless focus on this area. And we need more male champions like Rick DeVore who understand this issue and are willing to propel action in their companies.
Yeah, if they know it's a priority at the very top,
right,
then whether people agree or disagree, they tend to fall in line.
Right.
Well, Chuck, you just said the magic words. It has to start, at the top with the CEO. And, in our case, we have what you might consider some businesses that are traditionally maybe run by a female, like say HR, but we have some businesses that are not traditional that are run by women, namely commercial real estate, which is a very male-dominated industry, and our capital markets group are both run by women, as well as our small business and our commercial lending. So don't pigeonhole women into those jobs that you would say, oh, those are traditionally roles for women. Put them in areas in which maybe there hasn't been a woman leading before. And I think you have to demonstrate your thinking by your actions, and that's, I think, what our CEO has done.
Terry, let me ask you, we mentioned briefly Mary Barra earlier with General Motors, and there are a number of people, we haven't talked about women of color, Suzanne Shank, who's getting awards from everywhere these days, and one of the most powerful women on Wall Street, a Detroiter. We've had the role model of Nancy Slichting when she was in healthcare before she retired, running Henry Ford Health System. I mean, we could go on and on. Faye Nelson, who's, as we speak, is making a transition from DTE, and there's so many different examples. But what's happening, though, with women of color in this glass ceiling?
Well, I have to say, I think that the statistics for women of color are shocking. So when you look at this data of these 100 large companies, it's right around 1% of the board members and the executive officers who are women of color. And I would think we would have come farther in that respect by now.
What do you think is happening here? Is this a sign of the time, a sign of the political atmosphere, or just the messages of, you know, the Weinstein affair? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think that the whole issue of sexual harassment, all the news lately, it's become more broadly recognized that it's a broader problem than any of us thought that it was, and it's very serious. And the companies, the CEOs I know, have a zero tolerance policy and will certainly follow that. But I think that this is entirely about broadening the search for talent and being open to the fact that women are 60% of those college graduates. And I think the business case is starting to really shine through that if you want the best talent at your company, you are going to have to take a look. You're going to have an appetite for culture change, and you're going to have an appetite of taking a little bit of risk and not necessarily always making a safe choice in order to broaden the pool of who has opportunity and has access to these jobs.
Right.
There's empirical proof that companies perform better with diverse boards.
Right.
I mean, there's statistics to back that up. And also, I think, just to piggyback on what Terry said, there has to be culture on the board to consider the fact, you know, in the old days, pretty much you had to be a CEO to be considered to be on a board of a public company. Mm-hmm. But when you really think about it, there are women that are running divisions of companies that are bigger than some of these, an actual company. Like say at Ford or General Motors, you could have a woman executive having a P&L that's much bigger than some public companies.
I keep hearing there are a lot of people that are saying, you know, the heck with corporate America. I'm going to go out and I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to become entrepreneurial. Certainly, you know, as they watch the Dan Gilberts and others and all these different messages at Mackinac, we keep talking about, you know, we need more entrepreneurs. How much is that playing a factor in all of this when you're trying your best to break that glass ceiling in corporate America, and you got a number of young, educated people saying, I'm going to go a different route.
Well,
and small businesses growing.
Yes, small businesses are growing. They provide the majority of jobs in this country, and we certainly see that talented women right and left are taking the skill set that they have and looking at how they can grow their own businesses. We work with high growth women entrepreneurs who are starting companies, creating jobs, and paving their own way. So I think that that's another opportunity for women to shine.
I agree, and I think a lot of it has that some of the barriers to entry have come down because of technology, whether it's in your distribution system or your marketing or just, you know, building your website and so forth. Just if I think 25 years ago, some of those barriers were pretty extreme, especially when it comes to distribution and marketing.
Right, but we need them everywhere.
Yep.
No quite about it. Big corporations, small corporations, entrepreneurs on down the line. All right, Terry Barclay, thanks so much for coming in.
Great to be here.
Rick DeFore, thank you for coming in. If people want to get more information, you can go to the websites that we're putting up on the screen and you can drill down on them. And when Spotlight returns, I'll sit down with the Consul General of Japan and the past president and now special advisor to the Japan Business Society of Detroit. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight as we now turn our attention to Japan and its relationship to Detroit in particular and the United States in general, with two people who know an awful lot about the topic. And we appreciate both of you joining us today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
Mr. Omitsu, let me start with you. Just recently had the opening of the Japan Gallery at the Detroit Institute of Arts. This goes kind of back to, they wanted to really do it in 2007. Detroit DIA didn't have the money. Then it came a little thing called the bankruptcy, and then, of course, the grand bargain. Out of that, about $2 million was pledged to Detroit and to the DIA, and now we have a gallery that just opened up. As you reflect back on that and what just happened,
yes,
was it all worth it?
Yes, there was a time that the 2014. At the time, I was I got the letter from Jean Gilgaro and Gerald Rosen to come over to DIA. We have something to talk to you. I'm working as a Tier 1 supplier, Aishin, and so I had an interest to get there. And then there was a round table in the gallery, beautifully set up, and there are Tier 1 presidents and the CEOs sitting there. And now the Gerald Rosen, the judge, federal judge, start talking about how far they came to the point.
And he can be quite a talker.
Yes, very nicely. And how much DI has had efforts to get the money, to get the grand bargain through. So they are very close to the point that they need additional this amount. And I was very impressed about it.
Did you have any idea what was coming at you when you walked in that door?
No, I had no idea. I went back to the office of JBSD and talked to the president at that time. Hey, look, we have to do something about this. This is such an important value. You know, under the city, now they're going to get out from city and try to become Michigan's museum, Michigan's Institute of Arts.
The DIA and Japanese businesses did quite a bit in terms of saving the city of Detroit.
Right. It turned to be that way. I didn't know. I didn't expect how much we can get the money in. But eventually, a total of $3.2 million had been donated to DIA. But there was one issue we'd like to achieve through this, is that we don't have a Japan gallery, permanent. There's a great collection in DIA, we know.
And now you have that.
Now we have it.
Mr. Consul General, this has been a big week, this past week in Asia with the President Trump traveling over there. We know what reaction has been here in the United States because it's been covered heavily by the media. Reaction from at home.
So President Trump completed his first official visit to Japan recently, and it was really a big success. He was received by Prime Minister and Japanese public very warmly, and the two leaders spent very long hours together in Japan, including a game of golf. It helped to deepen their mutual trust and friendship very much. They discussed in depth their actions towards North Korea, and they agreed that the U.S. and Japan are in perfect unison on this issue.
The president said it's time to make a deal between the United States, North Korea, and anyone else that he could get involved to be able to help achieve that. Did he set the right tone? And trying to make a deal with North Korea, they didn't seem terribly receptive, but do you think that's just more posturing and the real work is going to be done behind the scenes?
Well, I think Japanese government has been very much supportive of U.S. position. It is really a critical moment how to deal with North Korean issue, and the two countries, during President's visit, the two countries and the two leaders demonstrated to the world very strong partnership, alliance between the two countries, demonstrated to the international community.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. And welcome back to Spotlight. Trade, where do you see that very touchy issue right now?
So as to trade relations, the U.S. is the second largest trading partner for Japan, and Japan is the fourth largest trade partner for the United States. American people are worrying the deficit towards Japan, but the Japan's portion of the overall U.S. trade deficit has decreased steadily from the the peak of 58% in 1991 to the current 9% share. So the situation has been changing a lot. In Japan, affiliated companies manufacturing in the United States contribute more to the total U.S. export than any other foreign companies. Those Japanese, U.S.-based Japanese companies exported $76 billion goods to the world in 2015. So I know some people consider that the deficit is an issue, but we are enjoying actually a very good economic relations between the two countries.
And throughout the years that JBC has been awarded or donation to the local community here, there are almost $2 million. And on the top of this one, the Grand Bargain is another contribution to the local community in many aspects. So this Grand Bargain is one of the things that we thought, let's speak out, let's talk of the people, and let's go more, not aggressive, but just try to reach out to people.
You have a stake in this city, and a stake in this country, and a stake in this community. Mr. Consul General, your domain in your area is Michigan and Ohio. What's your #1 priority as you go back and forth between these two states? These two states that can be very, very competitive, not just in sports, but in business as well.
Well, it may be true that the Japanese people may not as familiar with the Midwest region compared with East Coast and West Coast, and it is also true that the Midwest people have limited knowledge about Japan. So my first priority as Consul General is to promote mutual understanding, promote relationship, people-to-people exchanges in the field of business, culture, and many other things. And by doing so, we should promote the mutual understanding and friendship between Michigan and Ohio and Japan.
Probably the best news is that Judge Rosen is now retired, so you shouldn't be called into any more of those meetings anytime soon. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
It's a pleasure having you in and giving your perspective on this very important relationship between these two cities and these two countries.
Thank you.
Mr. Consul General, thank you so much for coming in. And we want to thank you at home for joining us. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.